platforms right now, Twitch and YouTube. Thank you everybody for stopping by. I will now switch over to the live feed over here on Twitch so everybody can see what's going on. And ladies and gentlemen, we have finally reached the conclusion of the series, Who Killed WCW? Tonight, I guess we all find the answers. I guess they're finally going to pinpoint who was responsible for the fall of World Championship Wrestling. You got Eric Bischoff on that list, Hulk Hogan. I might even start including Goldberg on there. But ladies and gentlemen, the first thing I do want to talk about, yesterday we did have All Elite Wrestling. AEW was in Buffalo, New York. I did not stream it. We did not do a watch long because, as I said before, ladies and gentlemen, I need a little bit more support. I need people to actually start showing that they support these watch-alongs, that they support these streams. Like I said, when we try to do our wrestling watch-alongs on YouTube, they will always get removed because of the copyright or whatever. Sometimes we don't have a problem with AEW, but my reason for not streaming AEW anymore is because, personally, I can't even afford to buy the pay-per-views when All Elite Wrestling comes and does their premium events. I've never watched a premium event other than just seeing, like, the aftermath and the highlights and stuff like that on the internet. Like I said, guys, I need to see a little bit more support. Everybody out there in the internet world wants to give their fucking money and donate to a chomo-ass Dr. Disrespect and a bitch-ass Kai Cenat. Well, you know, recently we just had our stove upstairs that burned out on us, so that kind of sucks because this year alone we had to replace a dryer, and now we got to replace our stove, so money has definitely been very fucking tight for me. There's days I fucking don't even want to wake up, and then I do, and I wish I didn't, honestly. But fucking for some reason, God fucking keeps me going in this world. I don't know why. But like I said, guys, if I don't see the support and I don't see people actually, you know, giving us views and stuff on YouTube either, then, you know, I'm not going to fucking take the time to stream that shit because honestly, I give a lot of my time and a lot of my effort away for those kind of things. And I try to make it fun here for us. You know, I try to do a lot of things that are entertaining to me, like when we watch wrestling and with horror and everything. But if you think about it, if you guys took the time to actually donate to me, you would not only help support my music career, but also potentially help me make a movie one day. And, you know, you would help improve the quality of these streams as well. I know it's not perfect. I know we don't have, like, the best quality going on right now or whatever. I'm, like, 2 months into it. But, like I said, guys, stop giving your money to a chomo-ass Dr. Disrespect and a bitch-ass Kai Cenat and start supporting the streamers who actually deserve it. So that's the first thing I wanted to talk about. And now, the second thing is Who Killed WCW? Episode 4. Of course, there's no available watch option on YouTube. I think they've removed everybody who's tried to, like, upload episode 4 right now. But thankfully, I do have a Hulu subscription, and it is available on the Vice page. So it's a series from Vice. But that is the only way that I can watch it with you guys today. Hopefully, I'm fucking praying to God if he ever fucking listens to me, that this will not get removed or even receive a copyright strike, because that would suck considering right now I'm on a warning. So if this was to get some kind of a copyright strike, that would be the first one. And then that would suck because then we can't, you know, do things like that anymore either. But right now, today, this is where we find out all the answers, chat. Okay, it's the conclusion of Who Killed WCW. This is probably going to be leading into, like, the final episodes of Nitro and whatnot. And then you will finally get to see the evil genius, Vinnie Mac, purchase all the competition. He bought them all out, ladies and gentlemen. There was nobody left to compete with old Vinnie Mac after the Monday Night Wars. TNA tried, failed miserably. Again, they tried to bring in people like, you know, Hulk Hogan and Vince Russo to run that show too. And if it didn't work one time, don't know why you try that again. And of course now, the only competition really for a WWE would be on a Tony Khan level, where you got a fucking billionaire football team owner trying to go head-to-head with Triple H, the Helmsley McMahon family. But, like I said, hopefully YouTube just understands that this, is just a little bit of a watch-along, and we're fucking just doing a little review to it. And I'm providing some insight as well from all the things that I know and from all the things that I learned. So fucking pray to God, right? If the man upstairs is listening, fucking just put the vengeance down on YouTube and just keep them away. Just keep them far fucking away from these videos. But hopefully we get through it, ladies and gentlemen. Later tonight, we will also be finishing Season 1, 2018 of The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob. So tonight, I believe, episodes 11, 12, and 13. It's a big 3-episode marathon, ladies and gentlemen. We're finishing it all out in one go. But right now, we got to get through Who Killed WCW episode 4. So let's get it started, chat. Got a little Pepsi Nitro today. Nothing fancy. Just a little Pepsi Nitro, sipping on some Nitro Pepsi. Turn it up for you guys.
10 million people in the United States were zeroed in on professional wrestling. We were the number one.
That doesn't look like it's too loud.
2 years.
Should be alright.
And when something
turn it down just a little bit.
Shit's gonna hit the fan.
YouTube doesn't like fucking certain audio plays.
We already knew that we were running thin.
It is so good to be king.
He cared more about ratings than
that looks like it should be okay.
It was a shit show.
Vince Russo was just another idiot. He was there to lead to our ultimate demise.
Kiss my ass!
I was done. It was over. I could have cared less. No doubt in my mind, Bischoff was responsible for a little of this.
Another nail in the coffin of a company that was rapidly dying at that time.
I don't control that shit. I go out and I did my job. My check didn't change.
It was the easiest money I ever made in my career.
Like, they got what? When guys got those kind of agendas, thinking about themselves, that's pretty much when the ship started to go down. This is tough shit. You ain't in Kansas anymore. Television show.
It's about a 45-minute episode. They're all about 45 minutes. Unfortunately, the last episode was cut down a bit because we did watch like a more edited version on YouTube, just so that version would avoid the copyright. But this is actually from the source. So this episode contained footage filmed by cameraman Scott Lansing that documents the final days of Nitro. So like I said, ladies and gentlemen, once Nitro was really reaching the end of its circuit, they pretty much just decided to sell the company while they still had a chance. And I actually did find out the exact number for you guys. Vince McMahon bought World Championship Wrestling for $2 million. Okay, today, like I said, $2 million to the WWE is absolutely nothing. That's them going out and buying a fucking Happy Meal. All right, and they got the toys and everything included too. So and some of this footage has actually never been seen by the public. So I'm interested to see like what the actual camera footage is going to show us here.
WCW come to an end?
It is.
And that's Dustin Rhodes right there, son of Dusty Rhodes. Obviously, more of you commonly know him as Goldust. But of course, Dustin Rhodes was also a big part of WCW back in the day. And also, early WWF. But there was the time when, the WWF really didn't take too fondly to the Goldust character and everything. Dusty and Dustin, both of them were really kind of heart and soul passionate about WCW. Dusty Rhodes actually created the Great American Bash. The Great American Bash happened here in Buffalo, New York, 2005. I'll always remember that because that is where I actually got to see two former WCW wrestlers finally have a match in a WWE ring. It was a match between Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero. And believe it or not, chat, Dirty Dom was there. He was here in Buffalo, New York. I mean, he was probably just like 7 or 8 at the time. I mean, I think Dominic is around the same age as me. So, I was around the same age when he was being put into the storyline, and when he was appearing on all those episodes of SmackDown and in that rivalry that Rey Mysterio had with Eddie Guerrero, Dominic was involved in that. I got to see him here in Buffalo when he was just fucking yay high, and he didn't even have a name. He wasn't even fucking the Playboy billionaire philanthropist. He didn't have Liv Morgan and Monday Night Mommy all on him. He wasn't the Bachelor yet. He was just a young wrestling fan playing his PSP and getting involved with the storylines.
It didn't feel like a family anymore. It felt like everybody was out for themselves, and it seemed like the blood was in the water and the sharks were coming to get it.
I think everybody just didn't know what was happening. We were still hearing the rumors that we're just going to shut the doors. So I think at that point, everybody was just really unsettled.
It's easy to lose sight of how lucky we are to be part of this. Hopefully it ain't over.
WCW wrestling is so important to me, and there's just that one guy at Turner, I think, just doesn't think wrestling's cool, whatever, it's on the road with millions of people.
I think Turner finally started to the books and said, we got to pull the plug on this. No matter how much Ted Turner loved this business and want to, keep it afloat, you start looking at the books at that time and seeing how much money we were spending. I can only imagine how much money went out the window. Oh my God. After Brad brought me back.
And you know what's crazy? Now I just want to mention it before we carry on. Since I did bring up the match between Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero that happened here in Buffalo, New York at the Great American Bash 2005, the sad thing about it, ladies and gentlemen, that is the same year when Eddie Guerrero passed away. So, I mean, God, I had to probably see the Great American Bash here was probably around like June or July, like sometime around then, right? And then maybe like 4 or 5 months later, Eddie Guerrero literally passed away. So that's another reason why that always sticks with me very vividly, is because, I mean, God, it was like I just watched a match with him, and 4 or 5 months later, he's entirely gone from not only pro wrestling, but just life in general. So just a little sad statement there, but rest in peace, Eddie Guerrero. We love you, and your legacy will forever live on. I mean, you've inspired so many fucking wrestlers, a lot of the cruiserweight division, and not only that, but a lot of the Latino wrestlers and a lot of the wrestlers who come out of Mexico. They've all studied from the Guerrero family. And Chavo Guerrero also got to, work with the WWE a little bit afterwards. And, he even received a little bit more of a push as well. I remember one time they put the ECW championship, I believe, on Chavo Guerrero, but he lost it in record seconds to Kane at like a WrestleMania. I'm pretty sure.
Kind of oversee Russo, it was apparent to me that things were more dysfunctional within Turner Broadcasting in the relationship between Turner and WCW than they had ever been. And I'm not talking about what was going on in television or how much money they were making or losing. I'm just talking about the relationship.
Time Warner is a company of winning brands and winning people, and so is AOL for this merger. Just like when we put Turner Broadcasting into Time Warner, it made the company much, much stronger. And I think we're all committed to making this thing work.
AOL was absolutely ubiquitous at that time in terms of, in the public consciousness, the company introduced many people to the concept of logging onto the internet for the very first time.
I've been on America Online 2 months, and it's really been a revelation for me. You got mail!
This was at the time where a lot of the new internet.com businesses were receiving wild overvaluations based on promises of future growth.
So now the year is finally 2000. This is the millennium. This is the Y2 fucking K era. And the internet is really starting to take off around this time, all right? People, they still got their dial-up computers. They still fucking search the internet for all the results on wrestling. But around 2000, that's when it really starts to become a little bit more popular with the world.
If you looked at the assets besides furniture, they have a subscription list.
And this is even before fucking Steve Jobs, Apple. This is before Bill Gates, Microsoft. I know it's hard for a lot of you youngsters out there to believe that, all right? But yes, there was a time we lived in the world without Apple or Microsoft products, believe it or not.
And that's the people who subscribe to AOL.
AOL's leadership in the early part of 1999 also were keenly aware of this reality as well. So one option that was considered was to merge with a media and entertainment conglomerate, which was Time Warner.
The combined company, which will be called AOL Time Warner, gives each partner what it now lacks.
What ended up happening is that AOL shareholders would receive 55% of the new company and Time Warner 45%.
Now, my dad's never been online in his life. Never touched a computer, never owned a cell phone, never used an ATM, right? He's old school. So I think there was a whole generation gap loss on AOL's going to buy this giant company with nothing, where the older investment guys are like, well, you can't turn it down. It's hundreds of dollars a share. This is going to be awesome. We're only going to make $1 billion, but nobody would stand up and go, this is a Ponzi scheme, man, right? This is all going to fall apart.
The blockbuster deal still needs regulatory approval and a nod from Time Warner and AOL shareholders.
AOL had serious issues. You know, WCW got caught up in that also. In a sense, you could say it was collateral damage.
Wrestling has become fun, crazy entertainment. It's an alternative. It doesn't define our network. It's one night a week.
It's a hit every Monday night.
So you can see right there the executives themselves, even at Time Warner, they're having all these real life interviews where they're speaking to the public. They're just generally saying to the public, hey, you know, wrestling is like our pastime. It could be here and then it could not be here tomorrow. We really don't give a fuck. As we all know, WCW was not in the best of hands during its entire legacy and its entire history. But not only did the internet age drastically change the wrestling world, but it also affected something that I love a lot, and that's music. But when it comes to pro wrestling, ladies and gentlemen, nowadays, what's really gonna fucking help a lot of the people behind the scenes know what's working, what's actually selling. You know, they focus on things like merchandise sales, right? Who's out there selling t-shirts? Who's out there selling action figures? Who are the kids always talking about? Who do the, you know, Make-A-Wish? Everybody wants to fucking meet John Cena, right? So obviously they're going to make John Cena the WWE champion at some point. But those are the kind of things that they look at now. Just besides ticket sales, I mean, at this point, like I said, WWE, they could go to fucking India, they could go to Thailand, they could go to China. They'll sell out anywhere that they really please. I mean, they've got audiences built up all around the world now. Probably wasn't that easy for them, obviously, here during the late 90s and then like the early 2000s. But it is starting to become a lot more popular. Okay, it is starting to become a lot more popular because I said Vince McMahon would always incorporate things too. Just outside of pro wrestling, he would try to get, you know, boxing stars to come on his show. Okay, they had Mike Tyson, which was really big for the WWE at the time because Mike Tyson was the world heavyweight champion. He was the world boxer. So for the WWE to get him to appear on their show, that helps them promote themselves to a larger audience.
It wasn't anymore because it was broken and I had to fix it. I was a physical presence there. I was in there trying to do whatever I can do.
And now that the internet is around, by the time of like 2000, I mean, that's where you really start to see things like, you know, WWE.com. That starts taking place. I'm pretty sure they even had websites back then where they would sell all their merchandise and shit like that too. But, you know, it really started to become this thing once the internet actually did happen. It allowed fans to look at things more behind the curtain and see wrestling from a different point of view other than what was just happening inside of the ring. And sometimes I feel like that hurts the business, and it doesn't. Obviously, the business is as big now as it's ever been. But, you know, there was a time when wrestling fans were just wrestling fans, okay? Not everybody out there was a fucking expert, and I kind of hate how everybody thinks they are fucking experts. Like I said, I mean, you have all these people nowadays who will watch a fucking WWE program, and when a wrestler comes out there and cuts a promo on the mic, the fans will chant what, even though it's been fucking 20-something years since Stone Cold has actually fucking wrestled in the ring. So, you know, the wrestling fans, to me, also are a little bit outdated with the times and shit. You know, they actually have to understand more of the psychology that goes into it, other than just, you know, this was one popular thing at a time, and now that is no more. Okay?
To get it back on track.
What a bunch of boobs.
It was so bad. I really felt like, okay, stake in our heart.
It was a chaotic shit show and a blur. And I said, I'm about to get the hell out of here because I've had it. You had to look out for yourself.
I just felt like Brad didn't know anything about wrestling. I mean, he knew about the corporate side, but he wasn't a wrestling person. He wasn't somebody that was going to try to help save the company. It was like going through the motions.
To be completely honest, I couldn't fix it. And the red kept getting redder. And the ratings kept falling and falling and falling.
In addition, WCW drove away its paying audience. A look at the difference in buy rate between the uncensored pay-per-view in March of 1999 and the same event just 12 months later in March of 2000. They basically put on the exact same main event.
And I've actually heard now that they're talking about like the buy rates for WCW around this time and everything, just how the audience is starting to dwindle. The buy rates for all the premium events are starting to decline and everything. I recently heard, you know, because WWE is popular in Louisville, Kentucky, I've even tried to cover the show Wrestlers on Here, which is a Netflix series. I wish I could continue to cover that, but the episodes are just going to get removed anytime we try to put them on YouTube because of the copyright. So unfortunately, we can't watch that Netflix series just yet. But Louisville, Kentucky is pretty popular when it comes to the WWE. And I heard recently when the WWE, they last did a show in Louisville, Kentucky, probably not even a couple weeks ago. They also did the show in correspondence with UFC. So again, that just goes hand in hand with their deals, right? Now what the WWE is trying to do, they're trying to work a lot more with the UFC because Triple H has that partnership with Dana White now. When they do events, like let's say like the upcoming WrestleMania, right? The upcoming WrestleMania is going to be in Las Vegas. Most likely, UFC is going to be with them around that same time. So they're going to be fucking selling out those same arenas. They're going to be performing in those same arenas, the same venues, okay? And all of that money is going back to the fucking head of the table. I'm not talking about Roman Reigns, but I think you do know who I'm talking about.
Hogan Flair, 2 years in a row. In March of 99, the uncensored pay-per-view enticed some 325,000 viewers to purchase the event, but just 12 months later, only 60,000 people were willing to purchase the 2000 version of WCW Uncensored. That represents a drop of 81%.
And literally right there in that dynamic that they showed, you seen Hogan versus Flair at Uncensored 99, and then what did they have the next year in 2000? Hogan versus Flair. You can see how not that much is really changing in the WCW world.
The narrative is at the end of 2000, WCW had losses of around $62 million. That's the narrative. And I think that there probably is a grain of truth to that. But what people don't understand is the why.
Professional wrestling is very different when you're a company like Time Warner, AOL. A lot of answering to shareholders that have expectations on a monthly and quarterly basis.
I think there was a lot of debt from other divisions in the company that could be allocated legally, but allocated as losses against WCW because everybody knew it was going to be written off as a loss anyway.
The bullshit internal transfers that people tried to park all their trash on our books while we were getting hurt.
It was clear to me at that point that Turner Broadcasting didn't want anything to do with WCW. And I said to Brad specifically, I said, Brad, why don't you let me explore selling WCW while it still has some value? Because the velocity at which WCW was losing ground at that particular time was pretty dramatic. Brad kind of chuckled at me and he said, Eric, you know this company. We don't sell anything, we buy things. So I just let it go. Fast forward.
Good evening. Today we announced that the Federal Communications Commission has approved the merger of America Online and Time Warner Inc.
So the merger was announced on January 11th, 2000. finalized on January 11th, 2001.
So finally, around the year 2001, the merger between Time Warner and AOL had finally taken place. And this was pretty much when WCW knew this is the end, all right? They're about to close their doors very soon. And not only just that, they're going to sell the company to their rival, the person they just competed years with, Vinnie Mac, the evil genius, Vince McMahon.
There had actually been a lot of financial experts who'd been predicting the imminent demise of AOL for quite some time. Keep in mind that throughout the year 2000, a number of significant things happened. We had the dot-com recession, right? We had a number of these internet companies that were going to be the darlings of the future that went belly up, which affected AOL in a serious way. Its stock price dropped by 50%, which of course creates a huge pressure to look closely at which divisions are profitable and which are registering huge losses. That put WCW even more in the crosshairs.
There were a lot of executives at very senior levels. The only person standing in front of them was Ted Turner.
The merger happens. Ted becomes vice chairman.
You know, he was excited about that at first. And, you know, you have an office in New York, you know, I've made it. Well, no, your name made it. Your businesses made it. They didn't want to even hear at the board meetings from you.
Ted Turner was no longer a challenge. Ted Turner was regulated to the corner and didn't have a voice or vote in his own company.
You know, Ted is no longer in a position to have control over WCW and its affairs.
But I remember it saying, you know, we're Time Warner. Is it that important to own a wrestling company that's losing money, bleeding massively, has lost money every year of its existence except for 1 or 2 years? Is that really what Time Warner needs to own? I don't think we need this.
So again, ladies and gentlemen, right around the year 2001 is really when that was just the final days of WCW. Not only them, but also a brand and a promotion that I loved very much growing up, ECW. All right, Extreme Championship Wrestling was promoted by Paul Heyman, and he did everything he could to try to make stars out of his roster. He did everything that he could to try to pay people when they wanted to get paid. But like I said, guys, Paul Heyman was also in financial turmoil, and he could just not afford to keep ECW running much longer. You know, there were times he even had to tell some of his loyal stars like Tommy Dreamer, Sandman, Rob Van Dam, you know, sometimes them guys never even got paid, and they would still wrestle for him out of the love for the company and out of the love that they had for Paul Heyman. I even talked about here on the last watch-along that we did for Who Killed WCW, the big what if is what if they tried to get Paul Heyman to advance WCW and take them to a next level. I really don't see much improvement happening there. I mean, sure, Paul Heyman most likely would have also incorporated a lot of his talent, such as guys that I just mentioned, Tommy Dreamer, Sandman, Rob Van Dam. He had future stars, people that he was trying to make the future of the company, such as Rhino, Tajiri. So I think, you know, he would still try to do the same thing there, but WCW and ECW are just two completely different worlds, okay? One is a southern promotion, and ECW really made its name in Philadelphia. And, you know, again, Paul Heyman, he was so influential in the ultra violence of pro wrestling. Now, you know, I mean, there's death matches done all the time in other promotions and shit. And they don't call them hardcore matches anymore. You ever notice that in WWE? There's no more fucking hardcore matches. They got rid of the hardcore title. The hardcore title pretty much just became the 24/7 championship, which was a fucking joke to them. But there's no more hardcore matches anymore. And that's how you can also tell that, you know, it's the WWE doesn't want to be compared to like that ultra violent style of wrestling at all. If anything now, I mean, fuck, I mean, as crazy as they'll say it is like a no holds bar, like a no disqualification match. But again, ladies and gentlemen, the big what if is, what if WCW got Paul Heyman to work for them and try to change things around? Like I said, I mean, by the time the late 90s come around and it's early like 2000, WCW was a fucking horse with a broken leg, and they're still trying to win races with the motherfucker. Like, it's just not working out for him. I don't really think Paul Heyman would have had much change around in the company either, because he still would have had to been answering to people he probably would have never even wanted to answer to in the first place. It's probably a lot better that Paul Heyman actually went to the WWE, because once he did go to the WWE, again, he brought a lot of his talent there. A lot of the guys started to get over there. Taz, Rob Van Dam, the Dudleys. I mean, I was always a big Sabu fan too. Don't get me wrong. I love Sabu. But the one thing, you know, you can see once WWE took the product of ECW and they tried to bring ECW back around like 2006, 2007, basically, it was completely different. I mean, they still had some things that were like edgy and pretty graphic about them, like, you know, they would still try to have like the one night stands, which was pretty much the homage to everything that ECW was. But it was completely different from the vision that Paul Heyman had for that company, okay? Because at that time, now it's a Vince McMahon product, and it's a McMahon product, and since it's on their TV, they're going to show their wrestling fans what they think is appropriate and what they want their wrestling fans to see. So that's also why, you know, ECW became very different. And I've talked about before, you know, a lot of the future stars that Paul Heyman could have even acquired if ECW still was in existence. I mean, you got to think about it. WCW made ECW champions out of, again, Chavo Guerrero, CM Punk. They had Christian Cage, Jack Swagger. You know, a lot of those names would have also most likely went to the ECW brand had it still been around. Guys like Edge, fucking Brock Lesnar, right? Paul Heyman guys. So you really have to think about, you know, one or the other. If WCW did manage to win the Monday Night Wars, wrestling would be fucking completely different today too. I mean, again, they had completely different mindsets and things that they were doing from the WWF, and they had a different audience. But thank the Lord that, you know, Monday Night Raw was able to get it done, and that the wrestling fans were smart enough to realize the bullshit that was happening in WCW. And again, once 2001 comes around, WCW's only worth about $2 million. So what did the WWE just sell for? Like 100 million, 200 million or something? So it's a little bit different. It's a little bit different in today's standards.
From friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
They might have even sold for fucking more. I think they sold for like around $1 billion. I don't know the exact numbers, but
It's a global web slinging sensation.
They knew that they had a cash cow.
I know it was like a lot of fucking money. I'm just going to turn the volume down because we're seeing some advertisements right now. Again, ladies and gentlemen, we are picking it up on Hulu here. So there's going to be some advertisements. There's going to be some things that if you hear something, it might not be related to wrestling. Right now they're talking about Spider-Man, but the Spider-Man I grew up with Tobey Maguire, the Sam Raimi films.
Set caught fire in real life. My phone has been ringing nonstop. I've got attorneys on the phone, Sony's on the phone.
This is a disaster.
It's the hardest thing I've ever done in my career before or since.
Giving me PTSD just remembering all of this. This is Icons on Earth, Spider-Man. New season premieres Wednesday, July 10th at 10 on Vice.
There you go. Vice going to do a little Spider-Man series.
I get a phone call from Brad. He said, so let me ask you, Eric, a couple months ago, you brought up the idea of selling WCW. Do you think you could find a buyer? And I immediately said, sure. I had no idea. I'd never done anything like that before. But I assured him that I could find someone who had the resources to buy it. I said, you want me to put a deal together? You want me to try to put some people together? And he goes, see what you got. I went to a guy by the name of Peter Guber. Peter Guber, at that point in time, owned a company called Mandalay Sports and Entertainment. He's a very, very, very well-established Hollywood guy. And he said, look, I'm not interested in investing in buying WCW, but I think I know some people who may. And he put me in touch with Brian Badal and Steve Greenberg, who owned a company called Fusion Media Ventures. Fusion Media Ventures had created the Classic Sports Network, which became ESPN Sports Classic. Brian and Steve understood media. They had great connections in New York on Wall Street, and we hit it off and started the process. I called Brad back, said, okay, I got the investment. Fusion Media funded the initial round with $5 million of their own, and then went out and raised $62 million in the market. I felt like I was capable with the financial resources and the right partners with me, that there was potential for WCW. The professional wrestling genre as a whole is indestructible. It's just a matter of the company being in the right hands.
Eric was invested in...
And there you go. Eric Bischoff even knew. I mean, he said it right there. It really just comes down... You know, pro wrestling at some point is always going to exist in some form or another. Like I said, guys, it goes all the way back to Roman gladiators and Spartans would use it for training and whatnot. But at the end of the day, it has to be handled by the correct people. And only the correct people are always going to be in charge of handling it, because those are the ones that are going to fucking keep it around for however much lifetime that it has. I mean, you think about today, I've even heard today, I don't know if you guys actually know, but since we are talking about Paul Heyman, you know, I've heard the rumor. I don't know if it's true because, again, I don't fucking work for the WWE. I'm not paid by them or anything. But I've heard that right now, the main writers for, like, Monday Night Raw, like, the main writer would be, like, a Triple H. And then for Friday Night SmackDown, their main writer is basically Paul Heyman. So you got Triple H working Monday Night Raw. Paul Heyman is basically working Friday Night SmackDown, which Paul Heyman has always been involved with SmackDown. I mean, even after fucking ECW got bought out and WCW got bought out, they incorporated the Paul Heyman kind of mentality more into the SmackDown product because, again, SmackDown was still a new show around the early 2000s. And Paul Heyman is also responsible for getting a lot of those guys over on that SmackDown brand, okay? They had Kurt Angle, they had Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit, Rey Mysterio. He was responsible in pushing a lot of the momentum behind a lot of those guys' careers, right? Edge even got a big push right around 2005 after he won the Money in the Bank. But, you know, even then, they were still incorporating a lot of Paul Heyman's mentality and a lot of the things that he wanted to do for the SmackDown brand. NXT is more than likely handled by The Rock's daughter. I don't know if you guys know out there, but The Rock's daughter, Ava, is our general manager on NXT. So that's all come full circle too. But I would assume, you know, the main booker, obviously, for all of the shows is still going to be Triple H. But I've heard that the main writer for Monday Night Raw is basically Triple H. The main writer right now for Friday Night SmackDown is Paul Heyman. And then you pretty much got The Rock's daughter, Ava, working NXT. So that's a great thing, you know, too. But don't know if you guys knew that. Just wanted to throw that out there since we are talking a lot about Paul Heyman this episode. But again, it's just got to be handled by all the right people, right? It's got to be in the right hands of people that at least know what the fuck they're doing.
Trying to keep WCW alive and moving. So it was very exciting when the opportunity came up to buy it. And it wasn't surprising that he went 100% all in and just gave it all he had.
We had come up with a loose plan of what we were going to do once the deal was consummated. For example, went out to Las Vegas. We met with Hard Rock, and they were planning on building a entertainment theater on top of one of their parking garages.
Oh, of course they went out to Las Vegas. Of course they had to have a meeting in Las Vegas. Can't do it anywhere else besides Las Vegas. Gotta be Las Vegas.
That would hold about 3,500 people. So we started to negotiate the opportunity for kind of a full-time location, producing our shows in front of a live audience in Las Vegas every Monday night. And one of the initial thoughts we had is, let's bring WCW back with...
So Eric Bischoff is saying when he went to the meeting to discuss selling WCW, they were going to try to still keep it going, and they were going to move the company and the brand basically to Las Vegas. So that way WCW could be filmed, recorded, and all performed basically in Las Vegas. Takes it a little bit out of the South and puts it more on the West Coast. But that was even an option for them then, is, let's take this company, try to move it in a different direction. And they were thinking, hey, take it out of the South, put it on the West Coast, and we'll just film it and record it in Las Vegas. Who knows? Who knows how that could have fucking went too, but...
This pay-per-view called The Big Bang.
So on January 11th, 2001, it appears that Fusion Media Ventures has purchased the company. The figure that was reported at the time of the apparent sale to Fusion was $67 million. There's a lot of exuberance about, once again, this being now the turning point. Now we've got the new owners in play now, Eric Bischoff's back in his position. This is where we're off to the races. The new goal is 100 weeks in a row, and that's kind of what's in the future for WCW.
We always looked at this as a partnership between us and Eric. We certainly aren't buying this because we think it should just stay number 2. We won't be satisfied until this thing is number 1 again, and our goal this time is 100 weeks, not 96 weeks in a row.
I was excited. I thought, okay, great. This is going to open a new door. We're going to continue to go on like we are.
I think we were going to see a smarter, newer, more refreshed version of Eric. He looked really gung-ho to make this work.
Turner Broadcasting guaranteed us our time slot on Monday night and Thursday night. So our job was then to produce the show, find the advertisers, and turn the show profitable.
I remember that being part of the deal. And I like that as part of the deal. Knowing that you've got that slot, then being able to calculate what the advertising value of that's going to be is critical.
So it was a fait accompli as far as we were concerned. And we were scheduled to close that deal.
On March the 6th, Jamie Kellner is announced as the new CEO of Turner Broadcasting. Jamie Kellner is someone whose reputation certainly preceded him in the television business. He's credited with having a huge influence over the growth of the Fox network, and then actually becoming a founding partner of the WB network. And upon being appointed to the role, his initial comments to...
All right, so just to put it in perspective again, guys, WCW really was a lot more popular in the South for wrestling fans, right? They basically made a name for themselves in Georgia, all right? WCW was a famous Georgia promotion. In New York, you had the WWF, you had WWE. Again, Vince McMahon and the WWE really made a name for themselves in New York City. Even though the headquarters is in fucking Connecticut and whatnot, all right, they really made a name for themselves in New York because that's where Vince McMahon did a lot of his partnerships with, and that was the people who gave him opportunities. They held the very first WrestleMania at Madison Square Garden in New York City. So that should tell you something. And now what's happening is Time Warner and the Turner network, the Turner broadcast team, they just got bought out. Somebody from the Warner Brothers had just come along and basically said, hey, how much money do you want? So now Warner Brothers owns Turner Broadcasting, okay?
The press with that, I'm paraphrasing, this is a great company full of great people. I'm going to try not to mess things up. I'm going to tweak it.
Jamie Kellner was one of the best television executives in the business, but Jamie hated wrestling. He hated it.
And that's one thing that they're saying here too. The person who basically owned Warner Brothers absolutely hated pro wrestling. Okay, didn't want anything to fucking do with wrestling, which is probably why you don't see a lot of Warner Brother involvement today in pro wrestling either. Warner Brothers, they are not fucking fans of that shit, okay? So this is probably why you never got to see WCW in Las Vegas, because around this time, they just got bought out by the WB owner, and he is not a fan of fucking pro wrestling at all.
You know, he hated it, didn't get it, didn't want anything to do with it. It was a pain in the ass, and we were losing so much money all the time that I think I made the suggestion to sell WCW. I don't know if it came from me or somebody suggested it and I latched onto it.
So once WB, Warner Brothers, finally takes over Turner Broadcast, the deal basically falls short. It never really happens. It never comes to fruition. Now they really are just in a critical point, and now they're just saying, hey, just fucking sell the company, like, just get it over with, rip the Band-Aid off, right? Pull the fucking tooth out and take away all the pain. Fucking, again, ladies and gentlemen, this is around 2001, so still early 2000s.
And Jamie was like, yep, get rid of this as fast as you can. I don't want anything to do with it.
March 16th, Brad Siegel sends out a memo advising WCW employees there's going to be a period of hiatus. Then just a few days later, actually there's not going to be a hiatus, but the programming is being cancelled after a 29-year run on the Turner networks. And that leads us to an episode of Monday Nitro in the midst of all of this chaos that has to occur in Gainesville, Florida that Monday evening.
Many of you may know that for the past 6 months I've been working with a group of people whose goal was and is to acquire World Championship Wrestling. But recently we've hit a couple roadblocks.
This is not via satellite, ladies and gentlemen. Eric Bischoff is literally speaking to the WCW fans. This is on fucking live television in 2001. They're shooting it in Gainesville, Florida. And fucking Eric Bischoff is basically on a phone, and he is cutting this promo where he's just letting the people know, listen, this shit is not gonna fucking be around much longer.
That may be, in fact, brick walls.
So instead of via satellite, it's Eric Bischoff via phone call.
And while it's still in my power, I want to do something befitting of what could be very well the last night of wrestling on the Turner networks. That being said, I'll see you all in Panama City next Monday night, the Night of Champions.
Incredible! We're just getting ready to close. And I got a call from Brian Badal. And Brian said, Eric, it's done. I said, congratulations, Brian. He said, no, you don't understand. It's done. The deal is over. It's off the table. We were rounding third, heading for home, and there was no warning whatsoever. It came completely out of the blue. Jamie Kellner, he was the head dog, and he looked at the WCW deal and contemplated us having at least a couple of years of 2 hours of primetime on Monday night, 2 hours of primetime on Thursday night. And
so the deal originally for WCW, when they were about to move the company to Vegas and start, performing and filming there and everything, they had the deal for Monday night, and then they had the deal for Thursday night, okay? The deal for Monday night was Nitro, and then the deal for Thursday night was Thunder. And that would have probably went on for like another 4 or 5 years, most likely. But once the Warner Brothers executive gets a fucking look at what's about to happen, again, he doesn't care about fucking pro wrestling at all. I don't ever remember watching fucking pro wrestling on a WB network. So, I mean, he basically sees the deal that's about to happen, and he just says, yeah, this is not fucking about to happen.
Kellner didn't want that beachfront property to be dedicated to wrestling content. He wanted that primetime schedule for other programming.
The cold, hard truth is that WCW was completely reliant on television. So much so, in fact, that Eric Bischoff famously quipped that without television, the company was worth $20, if anything.
So at that point, when you take the television distribution off the table, you're taking 90% of the revenue out of the equation. The deal was not worth it to us. It effectively killed the deal. I was devastated.
I do believe to this day, Warner Brothers still owns and works hand in hand with like TNT and TBS, because again, those all fall under the Turner Broadcast Network. So you could essentially say that WB and Warner Brothers do kind of have a hand in pro wrestling today, but they're doing business with completely different people now. Again, All Elite Wrestling, which is on TNT and TBS right now, they have completely different direction than the WWE, and they're working with a football owner, right? A billionaire football owner in Tony Khan. So they're doing business with different people. I do believe that Warner Brothers still owns the Turner Broadcast Network. Could be wrong, don't quote me on it. But around the early 2000s, they could fucking care less about wrestling or if it's on their channel, right?
What am I doing here? Stu, Snyder, ready, go, action. growing up. I loved wrestling. I lived in New York, so I remember going to Madison Square Garden once a month. Bruno Sammartino.
And who were they watching when they went to New York City? They were watching the WWF.
Evan Putski, Gorilla Monsoon, George the Animal Steel. I can go on. I enjoyed it. I loved it. It's a core element of my childhood. I joined Turner Broadcasting in 1993. My responsibility was to come on board and head up a unit called Turner Home Entertainment. And then I left, did a few other things, including becoming the president and chief operating officer of WWF Entertainment. The first thing I was looking to do was to keep growing the core business, to look for new opportunities for the company. I continued to read about what was happening at WCW. I kept reading about the behind-the-scenes angst going on there. The ratings weren't improving. What's going to happen here? Are they going to stick with this? Are they not going to stick with it? And what I recall is picking up the phone and calling Brad and, just checking in, first of all, because we've known each other for a long, long time. Keep reading about this stuff. Are you okay? And, he'd share with me some of the angst he was going through. I may have said something to the effect of, hey, look, if there's ever a reason to have a conversation, I think we might be interested. We were aware that there was another player. It didn't factor into anything. I didn't know their deal. I didn't know what they were offering. Didn't nothing. Internally at WWF, we had made a decision and thought if we could do a transaction to acquire WCW, we were going to work really hard to get that done.
On Friday, March 23rd, the WWF announces the unthinkable, that it has purchased its competition, WCW.
So now it says March 26, 2001, Panama City Beach, Florida. And this is most likely the final episode of Monday Night Nitro to ever exist. And again, it happened in Panama City Beach, Florida. So March 26, 2001.
On March 26th, 2001, the final episode of WCW Nitro is broadcast live from Panama City Beach, Florida.
Oh, what is this for?
Did a little documentary on the last day of Nitro.
Last days.
Do you know anything? What's going on tonight?
Right here about that clock.
Holy shit.
What is that all about?
MLC Florida? Vince McMahon vignette. Wow. That's big time, brother.
So right there, basically on the script for the show, Dustin Rhodes is looking it over probably because he's like a producer or, even just like a writer around this time for WCW. But he's looking over the script and it basically says right there, Vince McMahon is going to have a vignette. Vince McMahon is going to cut a promo on WCW television. Again, around this time, shit like that was kind of unheard of because Vince McMahon was never going to fucking appear on WCW unless it was to announce some kind of shit like that.
We had Vince McMahon starting the show on camera. It's hard to overstate just how shocking that was at the time.
Imagine that. Me, Vince McMahon. Imagine that. Here I am on WCW television. How can that happen? Well, there's only one way. You see, it was just a matter of time before I, Vince McMahon, bought my competition. That's right. I own WCW. Therefore, in its final broadcast tonight on TNT, I have the opportunity to address what is the fate of WCW. Because the fate, the very fate of WCW is in my hands.
We thought we were coming to work like a regular day, and no one knew until that night. No one knew.
We saw Vince come up on the Tron. No matter how you look at it at that point, no matter how it's spread, they win the war.
Vince McMahon made the announcement on WCW live television on their final episode. He told everybody, listen, I own your ass now. And even the wrestlers all had to sit down and just agree to that kind of fact. A lot of them did not like it. I remember for a period of time, guys like Goldberg didn't want to be a part of the WWF when he first started, and that's why it didn't last that long with Goldberg in his first run. Fucking Sting, Sting never wanted to leave WCW. In fact, Sting never agreed to go to the WWF, even when they were purchased. When WWF purchased the WCW, Sting, he would rather go work the indie promotions, right? He still wanted to compete against the WWF. But again, once all the competition really ran low for the WWF, he did eventually join them. And obviously now Sting retired with AEW, but there was a lot of wrestlers who, again, that was their rival, and it just didn't sit right with them knowing that they had just lost the war. Again, a lot of them didn't really know what would happen in their careers. I remember when WCW and ECW finally did start making appearances on WWF television, WWE obviously, but when they did start making appearances on WWE television, one of the first things that WWE did as a storyline was have this big invasion angle, which is considered like one of the biggest flops in their history, because it was essentially just a WWE version of the Monday Night Wars all over again. So all the good shit that you just seen for like the past couple years, now Vince McMahon owns everybody, and now that everybody is in his promotion, in his company, he basically just did a big invasion angle, which didn't work that well either, because again, that's when they were trying to make fucking Stone Cold like a heel. Stone Cold was a babyface. He was the anti-hero actually. And then, one of the things that a lot of people will always say is the decline of the Attitude Era is when Stone Cold actually did turn heel. And his heel character wasn't all that great, to be honest. I mean, it was really just him doing like a comedy gimmick and just, it didn't really fit his character. Again, Stone Cold designed his character to be like a serial killer. But he became the main enemy of the boss, and he became like the fucking Texas rattlesnake and everything. That's the Stone Cold that people knew and loved. And then once Stone Cold kind of joined forces with Vince McMahon, that is what a lot of people also considered the decline of the Attitude Era, because that is not the type of shit that they wanted to see. And basically, once WCW and ECW finally did start making appearances on WWE, they just did a storyline where it was like this big invasion angle, and it was the same shit people had just watched, but now it's just got the WWE paint all over it, and now you're just watching what Vinnie Mac wants you to watch. So
when WWE acquired WCW, it felt like the end of an era.
It sucked. The 800-pound gorilla of the room had won. Had no idea what Vince would do with it. I didn't know if it
deal with it, Goldberg. You couldn't save WCW then, and you're not doing anything for the WWE now.
And then have the competition or destroy it. So the fear of the unknown is pretty heavy.
There was a lot of sadness and a lot of uncertainty who they were going to hire, who they were going to cut.
We don't really know what's going on. People are happy and sad at the same time. They don't know why. I don't think you want my real feelings about it, because they ain't pretty.
It was very emotional. I remember Dusty was there, so I was sticking pretty close to him. There were WWF signs up, which was really weird. Because there's always signs like on the dressing room doors, wherever, and you were seeing WWF. I mean, it felt like a slap.
I remember Shane McMahon coming in and he had like a little brief meeting with everybody. And we get told the company has been sold to the WWE. And tonight, everybody's going to find out about it. And a lot of guys were like, oh my God.
As I was seeing, the wrestlers and performers backstage, shoulders might have been slumped before they walked through the curtain. But then when they walk through, it's back to business as normal. And then when they came back after their match or segment or whatever, it's back to what's going on, what's going to happen.
Let's not lose sight of the fact this is the last Nitro on the Turner Network, and we're going out with the bang.
Scott Steiner and I, we had a conversation, and Scott goes, "But, what do you think you're going to do, man? What do you think you're going to do?" And I look at Scott and I go, "Bro, who's auditioning that night?" Edwin was working that night, so we went out and we rocked it. I didn't know I was going to win the world title that night, but then when I did find that out, I go, "Oh yeah, man, I got a chip in the game. They got eyes on me, So I was really excited. I was probably perhaps one of the only guys that was excited though.
I mean, it was sad, It wasn't even sad. It was pathetic.
Why?
Because people actually showed up. Hey, you guys want to be on the Titanic? Nah, good. I'll sit and watch the thing sink from my house.
I didn't watch it as it happened live. I feel bad for the talent that were there. I feel bad for the production staff that were there that didn't see it coming, had no idea what their futures were going to be. It's a big life change. But as far as the brand itself, I walked away from it. I no longer care.
It's going to be an emotional thing. You see a lot of production guys, a lot of people with cameras taking pictures of the guys. And to me, I look at it as the day you left college and guys you might not see again. But this is a tight-knit group of guys we have.
It's like one of the camera guys and what a sweetheart guy. He'd been working for the company for 27 years. All of those people lost their livelihood. And that's why I say, you, Jamie Kellner.
I was concerned about a lot of people that just couldn't walk into a job so easily. Our jobs are so different.
And they're basically saying here, just outside of it from like a pro wrestler's perspective, all the people in the ring, they already, have their career. They've already, decided who they want to team with, whose brand they're going to represent essentially. Now, when it's all said and done, when it's the final episode of Monday Night Nitro, again, Vince McMahon, he cut the vignette at the start of the show, and his son Shane was even there in person. And Shane basically told all the wrestlers, listen, we own you guys now. And, Eric Bischoff didn't even fucking watch the episode. But like I'm saying, even outside of the pro wrestler's perspective, there's so many other people, who lost their jobs, right? Cameramen, editors, fucking anybody behind the scenes that contributed to the WCW success. They most likely didn't really get to have a job in the WWF, right? Because WWE already had, pyrotechnic experts and fucking people setting up the stages, people setting up the ring, their editors, everything like that. So a lot of people lost their jobs on this night. The wrestlers themselves didn't even know what would happen, right? Because Vince McMahon could have just fucking bought the whole company and just said, you know what? I don't want to use any of these guys ever. He didn't decide to do that because I think from a pro wrestling perspective, Vince McMahon knows how legendary and how historic WCW was. I mean, for years they dominated them until they couldn't no more. Even Bill DeMott, who was just cutting, a little bit of a sentence right there. Bill DeMott now in WWE is one of their main trainers. Okay, so even for somebody like him, who's a wrestler at the time, they never knew what their fucking future in wrestling would even be. So, thankfully, Vince McMahon, he's not that fucking evil-hearted. He still kind of gave people a chance. And again, he incorporated all the titles that he didn't have, right? The World Heavyweight Championship, the United States Championship, the Cruiserweight Championship, all became a thing in WWE because of the purchase over WCW. Not only that, he acquired all their premium events. So if Vince McMahon, or, not today, but if he ever did want to have another WCW episode at a point, he could have. I mean, even today, they'll still do things like the Great American Bash, Night of Champions, War Games. War Games is one of my favorite fucking events that WWE does nowadays. And War Games was originally a premium event for WCW, but now the WWE owns all of that. So
it's not a factory. We don't do the same thing every day. We're a combination of a circus and an army. And to get that good at it, we had to have the right people in the right places. And the way you got to that point was the trust of one another. Then now you can't do it together anymore.
Everybody was in a bad space. A lot of them didn't know what they were going to do. But there is a time, you gotta let it go. But in this business, it's a little bit different.
What was really weird to me, this multi-million-dollar company was sold to WWE for like nothing.
I'm not saying that there was anything spooky kooky going on there, but I have my suspicions.
When you think about the final purchase price, we're talking about a company that at its peak was generating in the neighborhood of $200 million a year, and a huge part of pop culture that gets sold for a little over $4 million.
I always thought that when I heard the price of what they paid for WCW, it was an inside job of some sort.
So over here, they're saying a little over $4 million, which is originally why I was saying like $5 million, but I'm pretty sure the exact number was $2 million. I can't tell you. Again, I don't work for the WWE. I didn't see that paycheck. I didn't see any of the fucking, money from that shit. But at the end of the day, WCW was really sold for fucking nothing. I mean, to put it into perspective, the WWE basically bought themselves a Happy Meal. And they got all the toys and shit included.
Somebody filled their pockets by making their deal, for cheaply as it was.
Maybe there's an envelope pushed across the desk. Maybe you got influence with the guy that's selling it.
Look, there's some murky circumstances. Stu Snyder was an executive at Turner Broadcasting. Oh, by the way, Stu Snyder, after the fact, just happens to land a plum executive role with WWE.
Bob Ryder, he was one of the hosts on shows that were broadcast over WCW.com. So in the summer following the sale of WCW being purchased by the WWF, Bob Ryder puts out a widely disseminated post online, essentially alleging that there had been a conspiracy at play.
Bob Ryder, he was a good man and a good friend. And I know that Bob had written about a theory that Brad Siegel helped facilitate the actual sale to WWE by convincing Jamie Kellner to take the distribution of programming out of the deal. Bob's theory was Brad Siegel really didn't want WCW as a part of the Turner portfolio, and this was Brad Siegel's way of using Jamie Kellner.
It's about 16 minutes left in the episode, ladies and gentlemen. 16 minutes still to go.
Something like out of a wrestling storyline, essentially. There was a plot initiated by Brad Siegel and Stu Snyder to clear the path for it to have a quick sale to the WWF. Stu Snyder at that time was the president of the WWF. He had previously worked at Turner Broadcasting, had a relationship with Brad Siegel, and so the allegation was that there were covert talks between the two, and the primary piece of evidence was the fact that WCW was sold for $4.3 million.
I don't know that that's true. It isn't.
So here they're saying it was sold for 4.3. Even Eric Bischoff doesn't even fucking know if that's true. But like I said, if you basically Google it, they said they got sold for about $2 or $3 million, one of those. But guys, I'm telling you, that is fucking pennies to the WWE, especially at that time, but even more so now today, okay? Just imagine, I mean, they probably do fucking $5 million on a Monday Night Raw. You know what I mean? They could even show fucking NXT, and that probably draws more fucking money than whatever WCW was doing, so...
Conspiracy theory. Unfortunately, there are enough questions and questionable relationships that lend interest in a conspiracy like that.
Because if you were friends with Stu Snyder, it was a way to ensure the WWF would have an advantage to the sale.
No. Well, first of all, we've known each other our entire careers. I mean, the fact that Stu Snyder was running WWE and was a likely buyer for WCW is purely coincidence.
Did you have any advanced knowledge that the QC deal wasn't going to fall through?
No. Simple as that. My understanding is that Brad reported up to Jamie Kellner, and that Jamie made the decision to say, I don't want it on our air and canceled it.
If you think about how serious these particular allegations are and the fact that they would lead to potential SEC violations and have serious professional and personal consequences for all people involved, it's quite the audacious plot given the high-profile nature of the people that we're talking about and what they stood to lose if eventually they would be convicted essentially of corporate espionage.
I'm not saying I'm 100% convinced that Stu Snyder was part of an orchestration to make sure WCW got sold for nickels on the dollar. I'm not suggesting that I know that. I just lean in that direction because I don't believe in the number of coincidences that surround this entire situation. I'm just not buying it.
I understand gossip. I understand rumor, but it's easy to sit on the sidelines and not really understand the economics of the businesses to say what something is worth. If there was a deal out there worth $60 million, I can guarantee you, as I'm sitting here today, the Turner executives would have made a deal. We wanted to sell it. When we sold it, that's what it was worth. My regret is that when the ratings started to plummet, we could not find the right story, the right players in that story to turn it around. You know, that's a big regret of mine. We weren't successful. Sometimes that happens. You can't always be successful. I feel a responsibility for it because I clearly was not the person to do it. I didn't know the business and the story well enough to write it myself. I'm not a writer. So, yeah, I'm really sad about that and regret it wasn't a different outcome.
Could anything have been done to save WCW?
In my opinion, without a strong advocate who really believed in the business, it would have been tough to exist there with everything else of their challenges as a company. But that world had passed. Ted was that person who was its chief advocate. In the new AOL Time Warner, without that person, I don't know how it succeeds there. And for good or for worse, the one thing that all the talent knew, they knew where the buck stopped at WWF. It was Vince. You were either in line or you were out. That's how Vince ran that place. That place was a different story.
And right there, they're even saying, ladies and gentlemen, the way that WWE was managed is completely fucking different than the way the WCW was managed, okay? WCW handled by idiots, people who didn't even care about pro wrestling, but now in the WWE, if you want to be in the WWE, you answer to one person, and that's Vinnie Mac. That's the boss, Vince McMahon. He's the one signing the paychecks. You either do what the fuck he wants, or you don't have a job in pro wrestling at this point.
Different time, different era. So unless you had somebody like that who could go, this is the way it's going to run, and I have the support of corporate to leave it alone and let me do my thing, I think it would have been challenging. It's been proven that it was challenging.
And here we go, ladies and gentlemen. This should be the final minutes of the episode now. Just about 11 minutes left. But essentially, they've already covered that WCW was already purchased. They had their final episode, Panama City Beach, in Florida. And now it's all just said and done. All the cards are in Vince McMahon's hand. All right. And he can play those cards however way he wants. All right. Nobody's telling him that he's under 21, over 21. He has all the opportunity now to use ECW stars, WCW stars, And if he didn't, that was all his decision, right? Anybody who didn't get to have a job anymore in pro wrestling, it's because it all stopped there. So
And let me be clear, we weren't looking at all to buy something and kill it. This brand is still good. It's still relevant to an audience. We're going to figure out how do we keep it alive. And maybe over time, it comes back as a separate show. In my head, I saw this great rivalry that was under one roof. First of all, it all started with the famous Shane McMahon showing up on WCW on Nitro and proclaiming, the storyline of basically Vince was going to buy WCW, but he snagged it out from him.
So that was another little storyline that they came up with, that like Vince McMahon bought the WCW, but it was really Shane McMahon who bought the WCW, and now Shane McMahon is competing against his father. I've heard some rumors like nowadays that Shane McMahon is even trying to work with AEW. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, if you Google Shane McMahon's name, he doesn't come up as a pro wrestler. He doesn't come up as an actor. He comes up as a businessman. And that is what the McMahons do best. They conduct fucking business, okay? Especially in the world of pro wrestling. But all that shit was just a storyline, obviously. The real owner is Vince McMahon. But that was just a little fucking trick that they decided to play on the audience, where it was really Shane McMahon who bought WCW to compete against his father. And nowadays, WCW kind of still exists in a little bit of a way. I'm not talking about in relation to the WWE, but I'm saying really Tony Khan, since he is working hand in hand with TNT and TBS, I mean, all AEW really is to me now is just, WCW kind of repeating history, but just with the AEW format, right? It's just a Tony Khan fucking show now.
I now own WCW.
I remember sitting down in my hotel room and writing down all the wrestlers who I had hoped to wrestle. Goldberg, Sting, Savage, everybody in the NWO. It's like I remember writing everybody down and going to Vince and saying, hey, this might be a good idea. What about this guy and this guy and this guy and this guy? Let's bring them in.
There was so much speculation as to how it would all work. What people don't realize is that when WWE acquired WCW, the assets of WCW, the contracts weren't really part of the equation. It wasn't like all of the talent that was under contract automatically came to WWF. At least not the big names that mattered. Some of those people had quite a bit of time left under contracts, and they were going to get paid anyway.
I knew that at the time guys were getting 50 cents on the dollar on their existing contracts, and that was not happening with me. I'm not going to give in. I'm not going to do it. So if I had to sit out for 3 years, I sat out for 3 years.
Not everybody wanted to go to work for WWE. You didn't have Sting. You didn't have Lex Luger. You didn't have Goldberg.
And this is one of the reasons why the invasion angle also kind of flopped with the WWE when they tried to do a little bit of a rehash version of the Monday Night Wars, but it was the WWE version, the invasion angle. Like I said, a lot of the people for WCW did not want to work for the WWE at that point, okay? Goldberg did not want to go to WWE and make fucking less money. Can you believe that, ladies and gentlemen? Sting was loyal to the WCW. He felt probably terrible inside. Like, now they just lost the war and now he's going to go fucking wrestle on the rival show. Like I said, Sting would rather go work the independent shows, and he basically ended up in TNA a couple years later. But they didn't have, at the start when WWE did finally acquire WCW, the one thing that they were missing was the big stars in WCW. So Goldberg, Sting, Lex Luger, those guys did not want to be a part of WWE anymore. Lex Luger from Buffalo, New York. Shout out Lex.
What do you really have?
I still had like over a year left on my contract.
But to me, they still had, a lot of the young guns, and that's what I always have to give WWE credit for, because again, they got to have the contracts of people like Booker T, Jericho, Eddie, Rey Mysterio. I mean, Booker T became such a big star, in the WWE once he made that transition. It's really great to see how they worked him. But even The Rock, You know, even The Rock was going up to Vince McMahon and saying that he wanted to have matches with certain WCW wrestlers. And it could be done or it couldn't be done because of the scenario and the situation.
They offered me a 50% buyout and go to work or just, sit at home for the next year. I said, nah, man. I said, out of sight, out of mind, I remember Ric Flair said a long time ago, time off is your worst enemy. So I was like, let's take the 50% buyout and let's go to work. Back then it was a test. Throw these guys out here and see how good they really are compared to the WWE guys.
Shane and I decided to join forces.
Well, the Invasion storyline was supposed to be the best that WCW had to offer versus the best.
So this is basically them now talking about the Invasion angle in WWE. And this storyline was the team of WCW and ECW. It was all of their stars versus the WWE All-Stars. So again, ladies and gentlemen, it was basically just the Monday Night Wars, but now it's the WWE paint all over it. And it's the Vince McMahon product. It's the shit that he wants you to watch. So it's Team WCW and ECW, all their All-Stars versus the WWF All-Stars. And that was the Invasion angle. And like I said, you could probably see why it flopped, because it really wasn't that interesting from what people had really just seen the last couple of years.
That WWE had to offer, but...
And I mean, even besides that, I mean, Vince McMahon, the writers, the producers of the WWF, they weren't gonna make their stars look any less than what they had already built them up to be. You know what I mean? So it's like, that whole storyline is fucking preposterous to me, because it's like, from a wrestling perspective, like I said, they're not gonna fucking have, Stone Cold go out there and look bad against somebody like Booker T. They're not gonna have The Rock just all of a sudden look like he's less than whatever they tried to build him up, and then he went to Hollywood and became a big star there, obviously. But they were not about to take their stars and bring them down to the lower level just to make WCW stars and ECW stars look good, okay? And when you think about it from a business perspective, it wouldn't have worked either way, because they basically just bought out their competition. So now everybody that just did transition over to the WWE, they're still going to be considered that mid card, right? They're still going to be considered like open and match kind of guys, because the WWE isn't about to take anything less than what they've already built up for themselves. So now everybody that did agree to go work for the WWE, everybody that did agree to be part of the fucking Invasion story angle, where it was Team WCW and ECW versus the WWF, like I said, the WWF and ECW weren't beating the fucking WWE at any time. They couldn't even do it in real life, let alone on a fucking Vince McMahon product. You think Vince McMahon is going to take the L? No.
We were in the shape to actually be able to really, really pull off an angle, just because we did not have enough star power to really, really get that thing off the ground.
They never really did a WWE feud correctly. And I think that was a big mistake by Vince McMahon. I think he could have done some really cool matchups and some really cool things.
Hey, yo.
They were going to write the history that they wanted to create, and no matter how you looked at it, we were the Confederate soldiers going to work for the Union. And if you thought that you were going to go over one of their top guys, bullshit.
That's it, ladies and gentlemen. WCW was the Southern Professional Wrestling Promotion. WCW, in Vince's eyes, was the Confederate Army. Okay, and the WWF is the Union. The WWF is New York City. The WWF won the Civil War, okay, in the Monday Night Wars. And now, like I said, once Vince McMahon did finally acquire all of those assets, he tried to do the Invasion, which was a flop to pro wrestling fans. It didn't work. It was just a rehash of the Monday Night Wars, and it was less than that, honestly. But he also brought back the NWO and tried to run a stint with the NWO in the WWE. But again, around 2001, early 2000s, NWO popularity is really kind of dying out at that point, right? I mean, how popular is NWO gonna be on a WWE product if it's not the fucking NWO anymore? You know what I mean? So
they brought us in under the guise of this isn't gonna work twice. I looked at Scott, I said, we're gone. We're done. We're dead.
WrestleMania 18, Stone Cold, he fucking buried the NWO. They had Stone Cold bury guys in the NWO. So that's what I mean. You know, what I had just said a few moments ago, the WWE and the WWF were not about to make their stars look any less than the stars in like an NWO. Even the most popular group for the WCW, they were getting buried to Stone Cold Steve Austin because that was the WWF's fucking main guy.
To have the wonderful experience to watch my friend who now has been sober for 11 months go downstairs and just start pounding drinks. And he's like, you talking about a miserable day of my life?
The way they said, WCW, it was no room in New York City for a company like WCW. That's just the way I felt about it. When the WWE won the war, not only did they want to win the war, but they wanted to bury their opposition and they wanted to plant the flag. And that's what they needed to do more than anything to really solidify winning that war, planting that flag.
To Vince McMahon, it was about sending a message. It was him basically telling all the pro wrestling fans, I own this shit. This is my fucking world now. And for, you know, many years in the pro wrestling world, it was, you know, there wasn't very many other promotions who wanted to go toe to toe with the WWE. I mean, TNA had a little bit of a run, but again, they died out. They're nowhere even near a fucking AEW, in my opinion, even today. But now the main competitor would be an AEW. And even then, I mean, you know, there's only very little promotions that can really go toe-to-toe with the conglomerate, especially after Vince McMahon won the Monday Night Wars. So, to him, now that he finally beat the competition, now that he finally owned WCW and ECW, he didn't just want to stop there. Now he just wanted to fucking kind of embarrass everybody that, you know, was going against him. And he basically wanted to send a message like, hey, this is in my control now.
Yeah, they had to be in, you know, dominant position to do that.
We're back live here, ladies and gentlemen. This crowd is still buzzing. Oh, here comes Mr. McMahon back. He promised to name the new general manager of Raw.
2002, Vince McMahon called me. And while Vince was speaking, I had already made up my mind that this is my opportunity.
Allow me to introduce you to the new general manager of Raw. His name is Eric Bischoff.
So this is 2002 now. This episode is specifically July 2002. They're the WWE at this point. And also what starts to kind of happen around 2002, 2003, that's the start of the Ruthless Aggression era, right? So that's when Vince McMahon had to kind of start pushing the next future talent. It was going to be guys like John Cena, Batista, Randy Orton, Edge, Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio. But right around 2002, they're the WWE now. So they've completely rebranded themselves, right?
I'm not going to say that everybody in WWE was happy to see me show up, but the people that mattered could not have made me feel more at home.
I like Eric a lot. We're good buddies. Known him for a very long time. And he has his bust on the Mount Rushmore of professional wrestling executives.
Everything that went wrong, the Fusion sale falling through, the fact that the narrative is Eric Bischoff, creator WCW. I had an opportunity to write the last chapter of my story.
Wait a minute.
What the hell's going on? What is this? You know, I had been at WWE for a few years as that general manager character, and everything was going great. And I remember getting a phone call from Stephanie McMahon, who was head of creative at that point. She goes, Eric, I don't want you to take this the wrong way. You've done a great job, but we're going to go in a different direction.
Eric Bischoff has abused his power for too long.
John Cena was going to hit me with his finish and then drag me out of the ring, and John Cena was going to throw me in the back of a garbage truck.
I remember watching that fucking episode live specifically. The main event was going to be Eric Bischoff versus WWE champion John Cena at that time. And fucking, if Eric Bischoff lost the match, he would be fired from the company. I'm pretty sure the angle was too, if John Cena lost, he would be fired from the company, but we all know that ain't fucking happening. So it was Eric Bischoff versus John Cena on a Monday Night Raw. I remember watching it to this day. Eric Bischoff lost the match, and he was essentially fucking gone after that.
And I was going to be hauled out of the arena. And I very seldom questioned creative. But I went to Vince and said, it doesn't make any sense for John Cena to do it. It makes more sense for you to do it. And I thought, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to have fun doing it. I'm going to make this fun for me. And I did. And I had a blast. And I got to live a dream and rewrite my own chapter. And I loved it, every minute of it. There's not a second of it that I regret.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of our episode.
Who killed WCW?
Ooh.
Who killed WCW?
Who killed WCW?
I think it was Turner corporate.
And some of the people within the booking committees.
AOL, Time Warner, the executives that were embarrassed by Goofy Wrestling.
The guys in Turner that didn't want us and didn't like us, and the top guys not letting the mid-card guys interact with them.
WCW killed itself. The cast of characters that was WCW killed WCW. It didn't function as a team any longer. It functioned as a bunch of self-seeking individuals.
I've never seen anybody that was that high up in the food chain take less responsibility. This is what killed WCW.
They were fighting within themselves. They were eating their own. The wolves.
Who killed WCW? That's easy. Turner Sports.
It would have to be the person with the checkbook. That would be Eric Bischoff.
Vince Russo.
Booker T said Eric Bischoff. Booker T feels like it was Eric Bischoff who killed him, but a lot of answers here are going back to the Turner Broadcast Corporation. And again, ladies and gentlemen, for me, I just say this, I've worked for a lot of assholes in my life. I've worked a lot of fucking dead-end jobs where it's like, I literally make fucking like $7 or $8 an hour, even at the fucking Sabres arena. And like I said, for me, people have to understand to treat each other like a team, okay? Because in something like WCW, there were a lot of selfish individuals. There were only people who were in it for themselves, right? Anytime you told Hulk Hogan he was going to go out there and lose, doesn't work for me, brother. Hulk Hogan didn't want to fucking lose. There were people that were in the main event spot in WCW who wouldn't let the other guys shine, right? They weren't going to give Chris Jericho an opportunity. They weren't going to give fucking Eddie or Ray the opportunity. And that's why they all jumped ship and they all ended up in the rival promotion. But at the end of the day, guys, from my personal experience, I just believe in treating people like a team. When you all come together, it's one of the things that I try to do, if I ever have the opportunity to make a movie. It's not just a selfish, it's not some kind of thing that you can try to make happen on your own, right? You don't get it done on your own. You need some kind of help. You need the fucking actors to be able to help you to make that fucking movie. And if people aren't on the same teamwork, if they're not fucking, if they all don't enjoy working together, you're going to have a really fucking horrible experience. And that's essentially what WCW was for a lot of years. It was just a fucking horrible experience. I mean, even still today in this world, there's so many jobs out there. And like I said, I've worked for a lot of fucking assholes in my life. I no longer do because I believe in just being self-sufficient. I want to have my own career with music and movies and shit like that. But to me, I don't fucking ever work with somebody that's all in it for themselves. You know what I mean? I've dealt with enough assholes and now I know how to deal with the assholes. But what I'm saying is everybody should be fucking working together as a team to really take it to the next level, to really see that shit successful. If you want it to be successful, you have to work as a team. And that's the only way it can really be done, especially in pro wrestling.
So
Eric Bischoff, two guys that had zero knowledge about how to run wrestling, and they put themselves in a position to tell people like me what to do, and that's what killed WCW.
As a matter of fact, I'm going to give myself a round of applause for that. Yes, thank you. Bro, they took such a drop from where they were.
Vince Russo's got the stream deck in front of his computer, and he's out here giving himself round of applauses while he's doing a stream. Vince Russo, you don't deserve a round of applause. You didn't save WCW. What the hell are you talking about?
Were to where it was when it was sold and so much money lost, I don't think anybody could have done anything. So I would say a business decision killed WCW.
I don't think one person could have killed WCW by any stretch of the imagination. There were a shitload of people who contributed to its downfall.
And you were one of them, Goldberg. You were one of the people who contributed to the downfall, you stupid son of a bitch. You fucking ended Bret Hart's career, and then you didn't even want to go to WWE because they were going to pay you less money than what you were making in WCW. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I said that correct. Believe it or not, Goldberg didn't want to go work somewhere where he was going to make less money. Wow, who would have thought?
I think it's a collection of factors, a number of reasons that explain its demise. There's plenty of blame to go around, but I think ultimately it was inevitable that it was going to fall apart.
A good buddy of mine, he's one of my best friends, downtown Bruno. When I first started, I said, Bruno, give me some advice. He said, you're going to hear a voice one day, and that voice is going to say, go on home, the big run's over. WCW as an entity, they heard that voice, and the big run was over, and it was awesome. Wow, man, what a run. It was always about the performances for me. It was always about the fans.
We were rock stars. Everywhere we went, it was packed.
The whole WCW experience was a hell of a ride, period.
Let us remember the lessons learned and strive to build a fairer and more equitable future for wrestling.
We've done over 350 or 60 some odd Nitros, and a lot of these people are like family to me.
It was a good ride. It was fun. You were like a big family, even though you're a dysfunctional family. You may not get along with everybody, but you're still going to be there when it comes to it.
It was the greatest job. They let us be as creative as we wanted to be.
The first time I realized WCW was big was my very first show when I debuted. There was a palpable energy. You could the crowd. There's something special.
Booker T's wife, Charmel,
about a wrestling fan. It just blew my mind to see what a big deal WCW really was.
Those are some great times, terrific times. And it came to an abrupt end like that. But hey, man, all good things come to an end.
Yeah, maybe for you, Goldberg. Maybe for you.
You know, when it comes down to it, WCW is Eric's creation. Any success they had was with Eric.
There's nobody on this planet that can look in the mirror and say, I beat Vince McMahon
At professional wrestling for 83 weeks.
It's a pretty huge accomplishment.
Nobody on this planet can say that they beat fucking Vince McMahon in pro wrestling alone, but just to have something under your belt for like Eric Bischoff where he was able to defeat his competition every single week, ladies and gentlemen. He did it for 83 weeks straight. WWF and Vince McMahon were playing catch up. They were trying to figure out a way, how do they fucking compete with that kind of talent on the WCW? How do they compete with everything that they're doing just to be able to stay existent in today's pro wrestling world? Eric Bischoff is the only person in the world who can say he beat Vince McMahon for 83 weeks straight. But nobody can say that they defeated Vince McMahon in pro wrestling from a business perspective.
Cool. Kind of with your head, you know, it becomes distorted. My memory is more like a series of photographs. There's bits and pieces and moments that stand out in my mind, but as time goes on, they kind of just all blur together. When I look back at my time during WCW, the journey, the ups, the downs, the ride all along the way was a rush. We were the #1 wrestling company on television in the world. Very proud of that. I was able to experience and achieve things that nobody thought possible. And I wouldn't have had any of this if it wasn't professional wrestling. So I'm grateful for every minute of it. The good, the bad, everything in between. Very lucky.
And for me, it does kind of end on a little bit of a sad note because, I love pro wrestling. I never want to see it die, even if it's the fucking rival, even if it's the enemy state. It's sad that the way things ended for WCW and they had to close their doors the way that they did. I feel a lot more worse for ECW and Paul Heyman because, like I said, ECW and Paul Heyman was one of my favorite promotions growing up. I feel a lot worse for them than I ever would for the WCW and Eric Bischoff. But it does end on a little bit of a sad note because, again, as a pro wrestling fan, I never want to see it die, right? I never want people to kind of question where did it all go wrong. But again, it ends on Eric Bischoff talking about the monster he created, essentially. And at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, like I said, you have to treat each other like a team. It has to be like a family, and that's kind of what the WWE is now. I mean, like I've tried to explain to you guys time after time, WWE is more of a family business, right? Vince McMahon learned how to do it from his father. Triple H and Stephanie learned how to do it from Vince McMahon. And Triple H and Stephanie's kids are probably going to be next after them. And guess who they learned it from? Triple H and Stephanie. So it's always going to be a family business to the WWE. And again, it just has to be handled by people who care about it, people who are passionate about it. You have to have writers that at least fucking care about their audience, that at least know what their audience wants to watch. You have to know, the bookers have to be able to put certain superstars in positions, have to be able to get them over, have to be able to start pushing that next future whenever it's time for that. It's happened multiple times in wrestling. I mean, Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, fucking, those guys aren't going to be around forever, right? So it's all going to get to the point where the cycle just repeats itself and somebody else is going to have to step up to that throne. But that's the end of the series, guys. We got to see all 4 episodes of Who Killed WCW. A lot of people were saying Turner Broadcast Corporation, all the executives, all the suits who didn't even give a fuck about pro wrestling. You guys know, for me, I'll always say that it was most likely guys like Eric Bischoff, Vince Russo, because again, from my pro wrestling fan perspective, I put a lot of that responsibility, again, on the promoters, on the bookers, on the writers, because it's their job, like I said, to really know how to attract that pro wrestling audience, whoever they're trying to fucking, whoever they're trying to put asses in the seats. Somebody's got to buy the ticket at the end of the day. So that's going to do it for our series, ladies and gentlemen. So what's next? Later tonight, we are going to be finishing Season 1, 2018 of The Last Drive-In with Joe Bob. We're going to be doing 3 episodes. We'll probably start around 9 o'clock since we are doing 3 episodes. But we'll do a big bang with that. The last final 3 episodes of Season 1, 11, 12, and 13. I would like to show you guys some other pro wrestling documentaries. I've already picked out a couple, which I'll just do as like some test subjects just to see if they make it to YouTube. If they don't, I won't fucking do it anymore, obviously. But if we can get them on YouTube and if they do make it past the copyright, I'll continue to show you guys some of these documentaries. I've already picked out a couple that I'm really interested in doing. Like, I want to show you guys the whole Monday Night War documentary, which I think we should watch after this. Not now, not today or anything, but the Monday Night War documentary itself. And then just, more personal documentaries of some of my favorite wrestlers, like, The Rock, Undertaker, Mick Foley, shit like that. And like I said, we're going to continue to do our watch-alongs with the Joe Bob Drive-In. And for me, hopefully we can just keep it going here on YouTube as well. as I said, ladies and gentlemen, stop giving your money. Stop donating to a chomo-ass Dr. Disrespect and a bitch-ass Kai Cenat. You could always donate to me. Like I said, you could help me with my music career. Maybe even one day we could make a movie. Fucking, you know, and just help improve the quality of the stream, right? Like I said, guys, this year alone has been very tough for me. We had to replace a dryer. Our dryer died on us earlier in the year, and now our fucking stove upstairs died. So your boy can't even fucking bake a frozen pizza if he wants to. But now we got to fucking replace our oven. So it's definitely been a hard year financially. And, you know, I'm not trying to fucking, you know, push anybody to donate. That's never what I want or anything. It's not that important to me. But at the end of the day, I think some people think I'm fucking joking around or like I'm doing like a stand-up gig when I say shit like that. I'm not. It's all from the heart. It's all serious. I don't know, you know, how much longer financially I can even stay afloat. But that's just the way she goes sometimes, ladies and gentlemen. But later tonight, we will return around 9 o'clock for another stream with the last drive-in with Joe Bob. We'll try to enjoy that. We'll try to pick up the energy later tonight. And thank you, everybody who was able to stay with me for this series. Anybody who watched these episodes, it means a lot to me. Obviously, you wouldn't be able to see the replays here on Twitch because Streamlabs is going to cut them off at whatever point they fucking deem necessary. And then on YouTube, we always got to fight the copyright sometimes. But the Who Killed WCW series has been doing pretty good on YouTube because it's more of a documentary. And we're not like showing fucking like a screen feed. Like I'm not fucking taking a direct feed from the TV or anything. We're just sitting in the room watching it. So thank you once again, ladies and gentlemen, for all being here with me during the series. And if you stayed along for all 4 episodes, that means a lot more to me because it shows that you at least were interested in the series. And hopefully you guys got some answers on who killed WCW. So until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace, God.